Welcome to In the Interim. I'm Bruce Mueller. I'm the Interim Dean of the College of Pharmacy at the University of Michigan. And In the Interim is a program that we've put together to allow our students to network with alumni and faculty and really ask any kind of question that they want. I'm sort of moderating here, but really for the most part, we're here to meet today Anna Schwendeman, who is an Associate Professor of Pharmaceutical Sciences for the College of Pharmacy. And I would just like to thank her for being a guest on this episode of In the Interim. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We have the ability. I want everybody to have a chance to ask questions. So you can type them in the chat if you like. If you want to raise your hands, talk live, or at the end we'll have a open microphone sort of situation. Anybody who wants to jump in can feel free to ask questions. I'll happy to work them in. When I introduced you, Dr. Schwendeman, I didn't talk about all your background because you've got a background that's different than anybody else we've ever had on the program. Can you walk us through just a little bit? How does one get to where you are today from where you started?
So anyway, thank you very much for having me here. I'm looking at your attendee list somehow. A lot of them are my postdocs, some of them are and my students. So thank you to my postdocs and students who show up to support me.
They're going to ask some really tough questions later,
yes,
so
exactly.
you be ready for that.
Yes, exactly. Like when can I graduate?
Exactly.
Let's see. I have unusual background. I grew up in Russia. I went to college in the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. It's like our Caltech of Russia. It's very hardcore physics school. And then after 4 years, I moved to America and I wanted to change my discipline. I didn't like to be competing with boys in physics all the time. So I looked at different programs, and one that requires some knowledge of physical chemistry was pharmaceutical sciences. And I didn't know the difference between pharmacology, pharmaceutical sciences, and or medicinal chemistry for this matter. And then I asked, and pharmaceutical sciences seemed to be the right one. And I applied for graduate school. I got in. I graduated with my PhD at the Ohio State University. I don't hide my...
Yeah, I notice you're wearing the wrong color here.
No, that's for a different reason. But
oh, okay.
and then let's see, I graduated in 2000. I always tell the story that I had to decide what to do, and like all my people who graduated at the same time, I wanted a career in industry. Many people who graduate with farm side degrees, they have great industry careers and job offerings, and I had several. But at the same time, my boyfriend was moving to University of Michigan, and I was looking for a job in Ann Arbor, and there was nothing in Ann Arbor open. I think at that time, Warner Lumber was just bought by Pharmacy, and they had a big hiring freeze. I looked around and I applied to some tiniest places. Actually, it was serendipitously. Somebody called Steve asking for consulting from a small company in Ann Arbor. And normally he would say, my consulting rate is so and so, but because it was in Ann Arbor, he was interested, and he said, yes. He asked them around, and he asked if they have a position open for a scientist, because his girlfriend is looking for a job. So that's how I applied. And actually, when I came to interviews, they were so disorganized. It was a tiny lab that they were renting on the South State Street, and they forgot to schedule my seminar. It was like really, the facility was worse than my Ohio State lab, to be perfectly honest. And when they gave me an offer, it was about $20,000 less than my offer from Procter & Gamble at the time, or some other companies. But at the same time, we were moving to Ann Arbor, and my boyfriend was here, and I decided I will take this job. So I did.
It worked out well for us anyway.
Yeah, it's worked out okay. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, thanks for that background now, because you went from there on. But before we get there, I have to start. We always start this program with a question about your background. And I know your computer doesn't let you have a background but you did make up something anyway. So could you at least show us what your background's going to be here?
My daughter is here too. Yes, so I have this background. Okay, normally that's what I would have. It's a picture that my daughter Katya drew on her first day of school. And it's a picture, it asks you to describe the life now, what they think about and what really happened. So what she think is that there will be, she said, think without coronavirus, we will be in the classroom. And that's what happened. But we still have coronavirus, so we have Zoom calls.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah,
There's
I
some
think
artistic there.
it's an awesome background explaining the status of our current life.
That's right. And it's true in Katya's school and it's true in ours. And it's true here
And
tonight
for
with
all
us,
of
right?
us. That's why the gym is the most important class. I tell all my students they have to get out of the screen. Physical education is the best class that my daughter has. That and music.
I could use a little of that, but I haven't left this room all day. So what the heck? So what were some of your responsibilities when you were at Asperion? Because when it's a small company, you don't just do one thing. You end up doing a lot of things.
Yeah, so again, when I came, I was really fresh graduate, so I didn't know definitely much. But it is a small company, less than 70 people. I was in charge of one project, manufacturing one particular project, and very soon, within half a year, I had to establish some procedure in the lab, and then I had to very rapidly move it to a manufacturing plant in the Netherlands. So then that's my first business trip was to Holland, to Leiden. And then, so I become in charge of transferring the process to the Netherlands, making peptide in France, getting lipids from Japan. So I was kind of making drug for this particular compound. And then also we had to file INDs. So I had to learn how to write INDs, which I didn't know before. I had to make some material for the local studies and toxicology, and we had a lot of infighting when the rat dies. So it's me who is made their own stuff. So okay, it started from a small lab responsibilities, and then it's ended up that I was managing about 50 different contracts around the globe. And by the end of Asperion, I was probably controlling 20% of the budget because manufacturing is a big budget activity. And also we used to do business development to sell the company before you could sell the company, you have to meet a lot of partners. It's like dating, you have to meet them, you have to smile at them, and then eventually maybe you'll go out for dinner, and then hopefully there really something happen, and then maybe proposal, maybe marriage. So partnering is just like that. So I had to travel to present how we make materials, what the cost of goods are, also everywhere, in Basel to Roche, and in, I don't know, the New Jersey, California, many places. So I was kind of one-man show.
So we kind of advertise this you to say you signed with a terrible job, you were underpaid, as you already said, and
Yeah.
yet, but that background, if you look back on it, sure taught you a lot of different things.
Yes, for sure. And then at the end of the day, the company was sold for $1.3 billion, which was the
And you
biggest.
got half of that then, right?
No,
Something.
definitely not. Unfortunately, so I had stock options, which is, it's a good part, but was never proportional to responsibilities. But I think that still it's really a great success story for the company. And I also tell everybody among my students that they should take risks. They should take jobs like that. There are definitely comfortable jobs like in Pfizer or in a pharmacy, but if you want to have a chance of a higher payoff, you have to take risk, especially when you are young, you just graduated, when it's the best time.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you as a guest is that you and I had been talking when I came on as interim dean. I wanted to learn what everybody was doing, and I was just so excited about what I was hearing, what you were doing in your lab, and also meeting your graduate students presenting at the research forum. There's just cool stuff going on in your lab. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the current work that you've got going, and then after that we'll talk about what's coming.
Okay, so I actually have many different research projects in my lab, maybe too many. The main project we're working on is development of high density lipoprotein, so good cholesterol. So whenever you go to the doctor, you measure cholesterol, right? There's you want to have a high HDL, low LDL, and VLDL.
And you can actually make an HDL, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
exactly. So I can make an HDL. So in your body, before it has any cholesterol, HDL is a particle. It's made of protein and lipid. And if it kind of travels around your bloodstream and remove cholesterol and then take it to the liver for elimination. So that's what companies I work for, they used to make synthetic HDL. So that's what we do in the lab. We make synthetic HDL and we use it to treat cardiovascular diseases, optimize the composition to figure out how half-life changes, how potency changes.
So in this case, you're making the good cholesterol, you're making HDL, and you're actually using the thought is as a therapeutic agent as HDL itself.
Yeah, as a drain for the artery. So,
so the roto-rooter cleans out all HDL, takes all that stuff out, and then you've got clean. So that was the first time I heard about all this. But then, aren't you also using HDL maybe as a drug delivery system?
Yeah, I would say so. We also use HDL to treat infectious diseases like sepsis. My one big grant was in sepsis, and now we applying for some grants using it to treat COVID because it's improve endothelial function. It's actually make your blood vessel function better, prevent leakage, prevent cytokine storm. So that's another good application of HDL by itself. And then I also have grants in using it for neurodegenerative diseases. So there are some diseases when cholesterol gets stuck in the neurosystem. So like Niemann-Pick disease, very small orphan disease. So that's it's just in the diseases. And then we do drug delivery and we use it with James Moon to deliver peptide antigens. And we have a company based on that. We also use HDL to deliver cardiovascular medicines, cancer medicines. So it's just very small particle and very natural. So you could inject it at a large quantity and it could reach areas that normally the typical nanoparticle doesn't go to. It's also been in clinical trials, so it's very safe at large quantities.
So how do you get involved in the clinical trial aspect? So I know your lab is making this stuff, and then you're adding maybe a particle to it, or maybe you're not, depending on how you're using it. And then how does it, I'm looking at the people in the audience. We've got farm site folks, we've got postdocs, we've got PharmD students, we've got all kinds of people in here. How does that get to the clinical trial from, the idea and from you making it in the laboratory?
Well, actually, to be perfectly honest, that didn't happen in Michigan yet. I'm not sure anybody's lab it is happening. That's what we write in our grants, right?
I see.
This particle of the great translational potential, I'm going to take it to the clinical trial. The sad reality or honest truth of it that it takes a lot of money to take any idea to clinical trials. It's about $4 million and it's not to pay your technician, it's to make the stuff under GMP, to give the money to the respected toxicology lab, to write a clinical protocol, to find clinical sites. So to me, just to having the molecule and taking it to phase 1, it's about $4 million at the lowest, and it's maybe a year and a half of work. So I actually do not know how many people manage within the lab to transition something to the decent phase 1 trial. But when I was in the company, we did transition several products to this stage. So I know I know what it takes, and I know the drugs my lab and the company work had been in clinic, had been injected to 5,000. Not 5,000. I think the last drug I worked on was dosed to about 500 patients, maybe a little bit more than that, but nothing from my lab yet. So maybe
that's the
never know.
Okay. Well, but I was sort of doing a little research on you, and then the big news. It seems there's always big news coming out of your lab, but the big news right now is this latest grant that you've got with Maryland. Can you talk to us a little bit about the Center for Research on Complex Generics and what that means? What the heck's a complex generic?
Uh-huh. So, complex, I would say easy, non-complex generic as a typical tablet or solution, something that you could easily make, easy for anybody to make. Complex generic is more ophthalmic products, for example, some ophthalmic creams or topical product, topical patches, inhalation products, something that is, depending how you make it, the efficacy, the potency and safety would be different. So what we know is that there are many products already off patent, but there is nobody can make generic of it. For example, my husband's lab work on Lupron Depot, and there is no generic Lupron Depot, and it's still almost $1 billion drug. Or there is another drug, Ambisome. I cover it in my PharmSci 518.
Right.
So we have a special lecture on Ambisome, and that drug is off patent, and it's $300K per year drug, and there is not a single generic, because it's very difficult to make. And so some companies enter, but they cannot make it properly. It becomes more toxic than expected. Some companies don't want to even try to make it because the bar is too high. So the the center focuses on those complex generic products, drugs like that, to identify why they're not being developed, to be as a bridge between FDA, generic industry, and us, the center, to understand what the main issues are. They commercial issues, are they scientific issues, are they unclear regulations issues. So one part is this communication. The second part is to actually do some research, to establish some methodologies that could be then given to the companies, so companies could come and test their drugs in our labs, provide expertise to assure there is more of those complex generic getting submitted. So research is the other component, and training is the third one, to give the webinars and conferences around a certain area of complex generic products, like, how do you properly measure particle size for inhalation powder, right? There is like at least 7 methods to measure particle size, and depending how you do it, give you different answer, but actually particle size impacts how far it will fly in the lungs, how effective it would be. And some of those inhalers are huge products, but the companies don't want to develop them because they could not guarantee it will be the same in clinic as the innovator product, right? And then you have this disparity in the cost of generic.
It's a lot different than just how fast does this tablet dissolve, when we think about some of the older products. What's amazing, we don't think about how much money that could save. I mean, if you don't think about generic products costing, $100,000 or for a course of therapy, and some of these are really, really expensive. So you have, this program, and I can see why it was funded, could really save the health system billions.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important research. And, when you as a faculty try to do research, it's a balance between doing something great and innovative and doing something useful. And it's really many
hard
times
to find something that does both.
It is very difficult, right? So in one, it's easy to sell science fiction to the funding agencies, capture minds, draw pretty picture. And this is what we reward because it's NIH money and it's cutting edge research. But at the same time, all those companies trying to make this generic, nobody can make it. And to understand what will make in the process a good drug and given access to medication to so many patients, that's really of big impact, right? But it's very different in terms of, and it's funny, some papers of my boring papers on those generic type of research get downloaded much more than my fancy papers. And I could see from ResearchGate, like, oh, today people in India read it, tomorrow it's in China and in Hungary. So I could see where people develop generic drugs. It's like a spy to look where your papers get downloaded. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I'm always amazed what countries are reading my papers. It's a crazy thing. I'd like to invite, if the audience has a question, just use the question answer feature, and I'll bring it forward. Or if you want to chat, or if you would like to talk live, that would be fine also. I did want to also acknowledge the stupid red thing behind me, just so you see my little sign that says on the air. My daughter bought me that. She said, if you're going to do a show from your house, you got to at least have that to show that you're on the air. So that's why we have that on the program today. So you've kind of, we had Tim Cernak on, another person who was in industry and came into academia. What's what's the attraction? It's not the stock options.
Um,
Why do
uh,
it?
so I think there are two most commonly asked questions. Maybe I should just answer them. One is
Okay.
question. It's always the question is, oh, how do you find and what's the difference between industry and academia? Do you like it here? Do you not like it here? Right? Let's see. I liked my industry job. I was very good at it. I would tell people jump, and they would jump, and things would be happening.
People in your lab here say that they tell them to jump and they also jump. No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
that's very unfortunate. They did call in, so at least some of them call in, but hopefully for entertainment value. Let's see. Okay. No, it's. I think when you are in the industry, you have one common goal, right? You want to take this drug into phase one. You want to complete phase one. So you all as a company working toward it. And when it happens, you feel great. It's like boom, you have this accomplishment, and you could actually see some impact. In academia, it's not like that. Every day, it's equally. I could get a very good grant, and then my next grant get triaged the same day. My paper get rejected, and then the other paper. I'm very happy with some data, but this student can never produce anything. It's like a constant. There's no good recap, right? So that's a kind of a difference. But then what I really notice in industry, in academia, what's really great is that you belong to yourself. In industry, to have this goal, you constantly have some, meetings, and you're constantly, pushed to do this or that, and there's just so much stress because you really have to answer to people. In academia, it's actually great because you set how hard you want to work, what you want to accomplish, and how big the lab you want to have. And then I actually really like it because I'm always with young people. So you feel much younger. So I'm surrounded by those wonderful students and postdocs and students in my classes. I feel great. It's excellent anti-Alzheimer's drug, right? You're constantly stimulating. And then you actually see students graduating, having families, moving on. So it's very rewarding to see how well they're doing at the end. So I find that part of the academic life very rewarding, and I find that having this freedom of what to do, where to spend my energy is great. So that's to me always an advantage of academia.
Yeah. So we have all kinds of students. We have bachelor students who are trying to figure out what to do with their career. We have PharmD students and we have graduate students on and postdocs. What kind of, when you give advice, and I imagine you give advice frequently to the postdocs and to the grad students about going into industry, what do you tell them? And do you tell the PharmD students that it's something different?
No, I'm advisor for IPHO,
Right?
Industrial Pharmacy Organization. So for any of you who are P1 and have not joined, I promise to my students that I will tell them to join. So please join. I think it's really great to be a PharmD in the industry. I think it's really a wonderful position. You could be there are several tracks. One, you could do clinical research. You could, facilitate those clinical trials set up. You could do project management. Many times I see PharmDs in project management when you oversee the entire product from manufacturing, talks, and clinical, kind of everything together. Product manager, you could be liaising with doctors after the product already approved. So it's a little bit more not research, but you kind of you are seeing impact of the products. So I think PharmDs could have a great careers in industry, and I am in touch with many of my friends who are PharmDs and who are, especially because now I'm advisor, so I try to find somebody who could come and give talks, and they've done very well. I'm sure there are other interests, right? So some people want to be in a clinical setting. It's more like a doctor, right? You help in actual patients. Some people do well in, in retail focus. Some people want to have dispensing pharmacies. I had
Mhm.
one in the lab, which is actually great. We have so few now people who
Right.
practically can make it. So I think it's great. I think that industry career is really wonderful. But yeah,
All
and
right.
it's not that I really chose my career in academia. I had a great run, and then eventually there is not so many options in Ann Arbor
Right.
to continue in industry. So when I had this job to take this job as a research assistant professor in College of Pharmacy. So when I actually took the job, I forgot my job. So let me tell you.
Give us
So
the joke.
yeah, when I took this job as research assistant professor, I had this really great friend from my Moscow life, and he is some endowed chair in University of North Carolina, Chapel Hills and Coley. And he emailed me and said, Anna, what's wrong with you? You used to be executive in this biotech company, and now you're some research assistant professor. So no, I mean, that's exactly what his message to me over LinkedIn said. I
Right.
said, well, guess what? I had wonderful run, 12 years in biotech in Ann Arbor. I had great run. So now I have this. So that's
Well,
what.
you're in the middle of a great run here, and I'm glad that you're here.
And I told him, guess what? So now I guess in 10 years I have to go from this research assistant professor to some endowed chair. Then I'll feel
That's right.
accomplished. I did it well. And that's
Exactly.
my favorite joke. I'm almost there, hopefully.
Well, I got more questions coming in. Here's one, and it relates, I think, to the generic center that we talked about. What is the role of an academic institution in ensuring drug affordability?
Well, hmm, that is a really good question. So I'm not economist, right? There is certain questions about affordability of innovative drugs, like why the prices are so high. And mostly what I understand, because in Europe there is socialized medicine. So whenever the Pfizer approves the drug and they go to Europe, they have to negotiate with the government what can Pfizer charge in France or what can Pfizer charge in England. So it's a lot more centralized, and the pricing is much lower. You could look up some of those prices versus when you go in America, there is no control like that. So then the company tried to recoup all the development money through the states. So that's really why we are very much a little bit messy here in terms of our prices for innovative products. For generic products, it's a lot of competition, right? Who could have the cheapest offering? And that what happens then, it's a lot of poor quality comes with it, or drug shortages. As a pharmacist, you should understand there is a huge list of drugs that are in shortages of drugs. And why? Because those companies don't make enough money, so they pull out of manufacturing of some parenteral products that are expensive to manufacture, and then you have drug shortages. So I don't know, I feel to me it's much more government issue. How do you want to do this control of the pricing? As academicians, we could write about it. We could look into exactly what are the different what dictates this pricing. But our roles as academicians still very limited.
It's
We
really
could
interesting.
write some papers about it, but
Well,
you see that there are two problems, right? One is if it's too cheap, then there is shortages, and if it's too expensive, then okay, there is lack of care. So
I
yeah.
spent a lot of my career as a rounding pharmacist doing pharmacoeconomic analyses about this product versus that one, or this treatment versus that treatment. But that's all on the local level, and maybe I'd write a paper about it. You're attacking it from an entirely different end, which is really important. It's not one that I guess I really thought about before. All right, I got another question, and I have a feeling more than one person has this question. We've got people in the audience, and they say, what advice would Dr. Schwendeman give to a student that's struggling to try to decide between career paths?
Oh, but career path. I can't believe nobody asks the question. The second most common question I get asked is the work-life balance. How do you manage all your children and your job? So if you don't
How many
have
children is it that you're balancing?
um, Well, I have three of my own children, so hopefully
And
one
they're
is
coloring
listening.
like this and making your
Yeah,
backgrounds.
that is my youngest, yeah, and then I have three stepchildren. So altogether at Christmas I have 6 children, and my husband is a busy guy. So yeah, it's a common question that I always get.
Yeah, and are you teaching with homeschool? Are you also teaching everything else too?
No, so I'm teaching my class, which apparently very popular. I have almost 60 people sign up for my little elective class, Farm Science
Excellent.
7 or 6. I'm teaching my youngest daughter. She's the only one who not really teaching. She requires supervision because she really likes not to do her homework sometimes.
Like everybody, right? Yeah.
So that's but sometimes she's completely capable. Luckily, my middle son doesn't require any supervision as far as the homework is concerned, and it's better. I find that part is better. I don't
All
have
right.
to
So
try.
answer the question then. How do you do work-life balance?
Okay. So people ask me a lot, and for all the girls who are on the call, I think it's important topic I bring up, even if you don't ask. There is never a good time to have a child. Just remember that. If you like try to plan it, there's never a really good time. So if you read the papers of all those female executives, I forgot which one said, they take the baby out, they put the guilt in. So, you're constantly guilty, whether you're at work, you're guilty that you don't spend time with your kids, at home, you don't spend enough time at your work. So just there's never a good time. So if you want to have a child, just have a child. I think
Agree.
many of my children
100%.
were unplanned. And then, I'm not perfect. So don't try to be perfectionist, which is difficult. Many pharmacy students, they are perfectionists. That's the profession select you for this ability.
There's a genetic predisposition, I
There
think.
is predisposition to this perfectionism, and it's not helping because you could not be perfect mother. You don't have time to be perfect mother. So I always tell I'm not a perfect mother, definitely. I'm not a perfect wife. I'm not a perfect advisor. I'm just trying to be good enough in all of those items. And then so just don't try to be perfectionist. Otherwise, you will really want to kill yourself. It just becomes too stressful. You're putting way too much stress on yourself. So just kind of, and then also when you look at what could fall, my senior mentor in my life told me that you always have to prioritize your family, your health, your family over everything else, because there are some things that it cannot bounce back. If you drop the ball of health, it can't exactly bounce back. If you drop your family, it can't bounce back. But the job, you drop it, eventually it will come back. So you kind of have to constantly balance.
It ebbs and flows. It really
But
does.
nevertheless, the question that I dodge, how do you make a choice? I guess it depends also who the question came from. More as a career path or specific choice among various options. That's what I usually ask people. So, when you, as a career path, I do not know, especially if it's a pharmacy student, you have several options. You should kind of check it out. You try in your rotations, or if you're a graduate student, you check it out. You try to go to some company for an internship. You see if you like it. You know what academia looks like. You know what. So you try to envision yourself in a couple different settings, and then you just kind of decide. And then the other important part is I notice people have this predefined idea. Oh, I want to work in the industry and I want to work on vaccines to help poor countries or whatever. It's just very strict definition of their own success. And I always tell them, beggars are not choosers. Okay, what you have to do is you have to interview and get yourself some options. You have to have some options. Or you could go to this company, you could for fellowship or have a job here, you could go here, you could go here. Then you look at your options and you decide out of those options which one is the best. And it's a difficult decision. So you go for a long run or a walk, and then you think which one really speaks to you. So some people write pros and cons. But first of all, get some options on the table, because otherwise, if you are too narrowly define your ultimate goal or have no options, then you're not going anywhere. So
That's
just
right.
work on getting options,
Build
getting
your
good
skills.
CV, having good CV, and then getting some of the offers, and then choose the best.
One of the
What
things,
else?
I'm getting a little feedback myself. I'm not sure if somebody's not muted, but one of the things, as you said, I didn't plan to become the dean, and you didn't plan to be where you are, but
No.
here we are. But you built your skills so that you were able to do some things when those opportunities came up, and you went for it. And if you did it wrong, you changed your mind and you did something different. I mean, you're not going to have one job the rest of your life. But one of the things that I'm noticing, because I get to supervise faculty, which is really interesting. I think it's different than supervising people in industry. As you said, you could tell them to jump and they would jump. Faculty aren't quite that way. Do you notice the same thing that I'm noticing?
Yeah, no, it's a very difficult. Yes, we like our freedoms here, and then also we are not taught to behave well. It's very unfortunate because in the industry, HR system is very powerful. In government, even more. Like if you work for FDA, HR system is very powerful. So there's a lot of training of how what is appropriate and what's not appropriate behavior. As a faculty, we got no training like that. And so there is no incentive or even requirement to behave properly, which is really actually a downside of many. If people would have some more of this training, it would be helpful
Yeah.
for communications with students and other colleagues and
And
everything else.
collaboration, everything is, it's team
Collaboration.
science now. If you can't get along with others, this is a skill to be working on all the time,
Yeah,
because
actually,
it's really
I
important.
tell my graduate students, your scientific skills are very important, but your soft skills are much more important. Your ability to adapt, your soft skills to define how well you will grow in your career, much more important. Your communication skills, your attitude. If that is right, then everything else will come around.
All right, so I'm going to let you. We're running against time here. How many pitches do you want to give her? You want to tell us we should join the Industry Pharmacists Association, or
Yes,
the
for
IPHO? What else did you want to
pharmaceutical,
pitch here?
Okay. So people ask me about PharmD investigations. I think now, if you guys want, I'm looking for people who write well to help me with the center. So as a part of the center, I have to organize some information. I might have to write some opinion papers or review papers. So I think writing is a little bit better for PDI projects. People like working in a lab, but I find that PharmD students have very hard time finding the big chunk of times to be in a lab.
Right.
So if you guys want to be part of the writing projects, go ahead, join me. Let's see.
I'll give your contact information here.
Yeah, not
I'm
so many PharmD students on the call, so not
okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop here. I want to thank you for being our guest. It's just great. And I have your contact information on this slide here. And if anybody would like to ask about questions about career, questions about student organizations, questions about grad school, questions about all kinds of things, here's how you get a hold of Dr. Schwendeman. And we're going to take next week off, but on October 29th, we're going to have a really special guest. Dr. Miriam Mobley-Smith is an alum of the College of Pharmacy, but more interesting, and why I asked her, is that she has this fabulous career, but she is the other interim dean in the country right now. And given that the show is in the interim, I thought one interim dean should interview the other interim dean. And so we're going to have Dr. Mobley-Smith, who I've actually not met. And so this will be a great program. And I hope you'll tune in on October 29th at 5:30. Thank you again, Dr. Schwendeman, and good night, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have a good evening.